Hello and welcome to the first ever 23-24 episode of Inside the FDL. Joining me as always, Nigel the Hawk Martinez.
Oh,
We got Darren Dime Shavitz.
Go deep.
And and do I dare call Jay instead of Jigga Jay Z? Do I give him the J. Carter name? Hey, you throwing some dimes out there this weekend. We're gonna get into that.
you get to call me whatever you want, T.
All right.
Well, first ever. Oh, sorry. Go on, T.
Yeah, well, here we go. Better late than never. This is our first ever for the 2023-24 season.
Really curious. Why is this our first? Why do you think this is our first?
Oh man, it's scheduling conflicts.
Definitely, yeah, possible. It's definitely possible. Yeah. It could also have to do with a particular individual performance this week. I think.
Yes.
You know, when Jigga Jay-Z was super excited to relay the day's events in this format because of his performance. I mean,
well, I must admit, I wore this exact same thing that I would wear to the game for this Inside the FDL broadcast. I don't want to get out of this clothing.
That's disgusting.
I'm sure Allie loves that.
Yeah. He's staying as far away from me as possible these days.
The Zimner household has been evacuated.
But the way you was throwing them dimes out there this week, AJ, wear whatever you want, buddy.
Oh, thanks, man. Felt good out there. It always feels good to be with you boys, but especially when I can contribute in my own little way.
What did you like from this past Sunday? What did you see from this past week's game that you could build upon moving forward?
So before we get into that, if you don't mind, host T, I want to talk about team building just for a moment. I want to talk about who was out there with us. And then, of course, we have to talk about an unfortunate injury that probably left us with one of our heroes, a first ballot Hall of Famer. But we'll go in order. Let's talk about teams. The last couple of weeks, I've had more fun trying to come up with teams that made sense in terms of what we're always looking for, which is to try to create enough fairness that the game in its entirety is balanced, never gets out of hand, and hopefully will result in a one-score game. Now, obviously, there's no perfect way. There's no formula. There's no way to know exactly what's going on in people's lives before the game, how they're feeling, what they did the night before, and so on and so forth. But just based on my experience, based on what I know of the players, I've been really focusing very hard on trying to make sure that everybody has a chance to play with one another. And now there are some exceptions, and Darren and I spoke about it this week, where Darren and Nigel very rarely get a chance to play together. I know Ryan has been asking me, can I play with Lewis on occasion? Try to make that work. I always try to find every opportunity for Guy and Lewis to play together, to give that guy a break any chance I get. And so there's all sorts of different things that are going on with line play, special teams, coverage, offense, so on and so forth. And I've been having a blast trying to come up with teams the last couple of weeks. So this was not an exception to that. This past week had a great assortment of players. Darren will talk more specifically about the RSVP process as we talk about this week's RSVPs, I'm sure. And Darren was, in general, probably more reluctant to have the kind of size RSVPs that we had this week. But because it was Thanksgiving weekend and he was in a generous spirit, he allowed for the number of RSVPs to grow to 18. Normally, a wait list would start, I think, after 16 people had responded. But the teams got a little bit larger, and as a result, we had a good mix of players, nice grouping of players, and we can talk about that grouping in just a second. But I just wanted to talk about the team building process before we went any further. Darren.
So I don't have anything really to add to it. I decided this week, because it's Thanksgiving, we need to play football on Thanksgiving weekend. Let the folks play. I didn't want a big game. That wasn't happening again. It's not going to happen for a while, but I'm okay with having a couple extra players out there, and we have things to do on the sideline, film, ref, scoreboard on some weekends. So there's plenty to do for people on the sideline, and we're old and often get injured, so it's not the worst thing to have subs. The teams are great. We had some issues with people showing up late, Tony, some people not showing, Javi, and so there was some sort of back and forth with the team building, but it was a 5-4 game. Went to the end. So Jay's been doing a great job as always in building these teams. And so that's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited to see. So Darren will send out a Monday morning sort of brief recap and allow for the RSVPs to start trickling in. And then on occasion during the week, once Darren starts to accumulate those RSVPs, he'll shoot me those names. And I was excited to see, and I think actually he put it out in an email to the entire FDL, that there'd be the return of Rob Cunningham, who's another legend in our league, and Miles Cutler, who had a short run, who Darren kind of poked fun at for almost being a legend. He doesn't quite have the resume or the number of years.
It's partially that, but it's partially he comes back every few months, so there's a mystique that comes from we don't love the extended absences from the FDL, but when you've been away for a long period of time and you have that tradition, that long history, and this is a pretty good segue to go into the Oren injury, I think, because he is absolutely an FDL legend. It gave me great joy to see him come back to the game. He kind of threatened to come back many times for the past couple of years. I'll be there, and for whatever reason, never happens. He doesn't like the cold weather. He doesn't. Oren has his particular likes and dislikes, but finally he made it out a couple of weeks ago. Looked great. He wasn't like peak Oren, but he certainly performed quite well, considering he's done zero physical activity, in his own words, over the last couple of years. And so I was just excited. Not only did he come back 2 weeks, he came back last week again and seemed like he was going to be a regular. And that was, that thrilled me. Not saying we now have a nice stable of quarterbacks. Last year we could have probably used him more, but he's a great personality, a great person to have around. And it was very painful, obviously mostly painful for him to see him suffer that what ended up being an Achilles tear. But it's painful for us, because I know that's the end of his FDL career, and he basically verified it to me. He wrote me a text that said, "I appreciate your kind words on your email. I am done with football, but I will always be a fan of the FDL and a fan of you." So very, very appreciated thoughts. And
I guess we can shed a tear for the tear.
Shed a tear for the tear. Yeah. And I mean, it is one of the worst. It's right up there with ACL in terms of rehab and the length of recovery, et cetera. And he is going to have surgery. So it just sucks. I mean, it's awful. And I told him, I assumed you were going to be done with football. I mean, this is something I love more than almost anything outside my family and friends. And yet, if I had that kind of injury, there's a good chance I wouldn't be able to make it back either. So I hate it, and it's an awful coloring of what was a good game, obviously by you and in general. But when you have that kind of injury, it definitely.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of an indicator, Darren. I think you and I talked about this as well. I think there was a crossing pattern. You were playing quarterback. Oren was at receiver, and he was coming across the field. And I think you probably threw a ball very accurately. I think you might have hit him in the hands, but Oren came up a little bit lame. We all got a concern. Was it an ankle? Was it a calf? But he definitely was limping, and he kind of waved everybody off to suggest that he was okay. But that may have been the beginning of what ended up resulting in like 5 plays later, when he was then coming across the other direction and he went down, and we knew it was bad.
I think so. I was thinking about that too, Jay. Funny that you said that, because I did notice that play. It happened on the far end of the field, right?
It was actually midfield is where he first got hurt. And I threw him a pass, and he like stopped going for it, and he came back limping. And I think it was more upper leg that he was like kind of holding. And he said, "No, it's fine. It's just me being out of shape or whatever." But that can happen when you have one injury somewhere else. You compensate, and the body, does some funky things. So, I mean, again,
we'll miss you, Oren. I've gotten to know you over the years of playing with you, and then of course missed you as you've been away. But you're doing such incredible work. We were, rather than cheering for you on the field, cheering for you in real life to do what you do. And we hope that you'll come out and say hello once in a while, because I don't want too many years to pass without connecting with you. That's for sure. I'm
No,
sure the
don't be
rest of the league
don't be a
agrees.
stranger. And in the process, I was going through his stats.
Yeah,
He had some really good years. You know,
he's an
he
MVP, right?
two-time MVP.
Two
He won.
times.
Yeah, he won in basically the first year we kept win-loss stats. He had the most wins in the league. I remember the last game, Brett and him had in the race for the best record for the year, and I had them be against each other, and Orrin won that game. And I don't think that time we voted. I just awarded MVP. Although we might have voted. I don't remember. It's not long ago. And then like 11 years later, like he wasn't a quarterback at the time. He was just a receiver and then a rusher. And then like sometime in the midst, he wanted to, give it a go at quarterback. And he was, I would say similar to you, like he had growing pains in the beginning and struggled, and he never had the prettiest ball in the league, but he just got better and better. He learned how the FDL kind of works, and maybe, hey, is this a good segue to go to your performance, or no, you don't even want to talk about it?
I want to talk about it at the end because I have a very important point to make. A very, very important point to make, and I think it'll wrap up this episode of the Inside the FDL rather nicely. But let's jump into the teams, just so those that are viewing, in case anybody who didn't play in the game that chooses to watch this thrilling celebration of Sunday's game will get a better understanding of what went on. The teams were Nigel, Rob Cunningham, also a former MVP. We were happy to see back for the first time this year and maybe the last time. Two-time MVP. Yeah. We had Guy. Javi was supposed to show up, but was replaced by Isaiah. I'm not sure how that all came about, but Darren, you reported to me earlier that morning that if Javi didn't show, that Isaiah would. So you had it already worked out, and I figured that was probably
they're comparable. I wouldn't say totally interchangeable, but close enough.
Close enough. So we allowed for that switch to occur. One of our favorite players, Ray, an all-time Chad, sort of a guy, just always a great attitude. So happy to be out there playing with us. Of course, T, my man T, who I had with me on this particular team. I haven't mentioned myself on this team yet, but T had a stat streak snapped last week in the big game, which almost shouldn't count. I almost think it's fair. It's unfair because our game is generally 7v7, but this was a 10v10 last week. T, unfortunately, had probably 10 straight weeks of either having an interception or scoring a touchdown or having a sack. The guy has been on an absolute tear and a mission. I've been saying in my recaps that I think you are a front runner for most improved player. We can maybe talk about that in a future episode, but you've been having a tremendous year. And I said to you Sunday morning, we start a new stat streak today. And sure enough, you got in the stat book, and we'll talk a little bit about that play in just a moment. But to round out the team, it was Alexi, and it was supposed to be Tony and me. But when we had, who was it that did not show up?
Tony was
late. Tony was late.
Isaiah's was late too because he came.
Right. And so what we decided, just for balance of teams, that it was more appropriate for Tony to jump over to the Darren team, which was Darren, Orrin, Lewis, Miles, Ryan, Joe Jr., Chris, Omar, and Brett. And although there are, I think, 9 members per team, there were only 17 people showed?
No,
or did all 18? Did we have anybody that was missing? Maybe not. We had 18 people, so 2 people were to sit from each team because we decided to play 7v7. Correct?
I believe so. We always had 2 people sitting. I don't know.
Oh, I know what happened. Orrin got hurt. So you lost Orrin, and the teams were down to whatever number of players. And then Tony showed up or whatever it was.
Yeah, but how did we end up? Because at the end we had 2 people sitting and you had 0, and yet we're the ones.
We were playing you 7 on 6. That's why it worked out so well. Yeah, no, we lost Guy to a sex reveal. We thought it was his sex reveal, but apparently he was the only one on the planet that knew of a buddy's unborn child's sex, and he had to race over to make sure that he was at the reveal party. So we lost Guy a little bit earlier than our game concluded, and so we thought it would be best for balance to sort out the teams in the way that we did. But essentially, it was the same way that I had determined would be fairest, and we went with it, and I thought the gameplay was pretty good. I mean, any complaints about any of the rust on Rob or Miles? I thought Rob and Miles, and we'll talk about Rob in just a second, but you never know with Miles, with coverage and with his ability. It seemed like he played a lot on the line. I was a little surprised by that. He was a former quarterback in the league. When he was playing more consistently, he didn't throw the ball once. But he was
we had 3 quarterbacks, 4 if you count Miles.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think he understood that his role was elsewhere, and he did fine. I mean, he didn't have contributions. No, it was a weird game in that regard, because we did shift it around. I mean, Lou was on the line a lot. It's not like we had him out running every drive, but for whatever reason, it was a Lou focused game on our end. No one else really stepped up significantly, and that's our side. I know you can talk about your side, but
well, we had Nigel who started at quarterback. I always like for him to start the game and to get himself into a bit of a groove.
But I did.
But
I
yeah,
had a hard time doing that.
yeah, it wasn't working so well for Nigel, at least initially. But we'll talk about Nigel's performance late in the game. The ball was turned over to me, and I had one of those out of body experiences where I felt like every single time I was going to throw. I thought, well, listen, I'm going to be honest about how I was feeling out there. It just wasn't me. I just didn't feel like the same guy that I am generally on Sunday. Like, I know my place in this league. I've never once said to anybody out there that I'm a great athlete or that I compare myself to any of you guys. Like, I think for the most part, 90% of the league is a far better athlete with far more experience playing football than I am. I just love you guys so much. I love competition. I love sports. I love football. I love doing whatever I can, whether it's on the defensive or offensive line, whatever you guys tell me to do. I try to run my routes crisply, but obviously I'm slower. And something that no one knows except for Darren is I texted him the night before and I said, what's the RSVP protocol? Because I got to tell you, my back is a mess. I played Thursday in a turkey bowl for Thanksgiving, which is something we'll talk about at another time. But I'd like to invite the FDL to take on these guys, these turkeys who think they're hot shit on Thursday, the Thursday morning before Thanksgiving, and take them on. But I played quarterback there. And I just came away from it feeling wrecked. I didn't stretch well. It was early in the morning and I was really banged up. And I said, Darren, I'm not going to play today. I don't think I'm going to make it. He's like, no. You have until tomorrow morning to let me know. You're not going to get into any trouble. I'm like, really? Because I think one of the Montalvos wants to be there. Maybe they should take my place. He's like, no, just give yourself the night and let me know in the morning. And sure enough, of course, I wasn't going to give up my FDL. And I came out there not expecting a ton for myself. And it turns out I had one of these games. It was just magical. I don't know if it was just a chemistry thing or my timing was good or my arm felt good, but the ball was coming out crisp in warmups. And it just felt like every single time I threw the ball, it should have been a completion. Now, obviously, I didn't complete 100% of the passes I threw, but I had so much confidence back there with every single route.
And it showed, I forgot about your back. I even forgot about it because obviously it wasn't showing on the field, but you really did miss an opportunity to pull one of those like Jordan games, like start limping after each throw and, really play up the injury. So, I mean, look, I gotta tell you, you had Oliver there this week and first of all, that kid's hilarious, dude. I mean, he is a riot with, like he wanting to get paid for his stat keeping. And we had some funny discussions out there with Zeph, but I was like, and I think I gotta call Zach. I gotta call Caston, have him come here real quick, shut this shit down on the other side, because even if he's in like a 10 block radius, I feel like the vibes will emanate and destroy Jay somehow. So I almost had him on speed dial to get into the field so we could end this heroic quarterback endeavors. But you were leading receivers, you were making some dime throws, you were on the run, you were just doing things that I hadn't really seen before, and it's just awesome to see, and congratulations.
Well, thank you. But I will say this. T, I can't hear you.
No, it was a great week.
Thanks, man.
Performance, really.
And I love getting you involved early, getting those hands nice and warm. Really wanted to get you in the end zone. Unfortunately, you were not one of the receivers that I got into the end zone. I was able to get Guy, Rob, and Isaiah in the end zone on my 3 touchdown passes. But you were the one guy that I was really hoping to kind of keep up with that stat connection. But you did get a pick 6 in our own end of the field on a sort of an ill-advised Chris throw, which I wasn't really sure where he was going with the pass. Darren's making faces over there. But you got into the end zone, and your touchdown celebration is one I'll never forget. It was statuesque. It was prolonged. It had the T scream, and then the look of joy on your face to be in the end zone was a delight. But I do want to turn the attention to Rob, who I thought played an incredible game. He did everything. He had 2 touchdown catches. Maybe should have been a third.
Should have been a third.
We can talk about that too. Although it's going to get an edit from our friend Nigel over here when I talk about what is it called? Inappropriate touching. No, it's not an inappropriate touching. Illegal touching.
Unwanted touching.
Illegal touching by Rob. Apparently, this is something that Brett has done in the past, because I turned to Darren. I said, Darren, are you really sure he ran out of the back of the end zone? And Darren gave me a look like this wasn't BS. It was like, I saw that he ran out of the end zone and then came back in and made a miraculous catch. I mean, Nigel threw a dime, and we'll get back to Nigel in just a second, at a very crucial point in the game where we had just taken the lead on a very long touchdown pass from Nigel to Rob in the other end zone. But Brett apparently does something with receivers, whether he's playing safety or corner, where he runs the end line, the back touchdown line, and forces the receiver to go behind and out of bounds so that they can't be the first to touch the ball. And apparently Brett did this on this particular play, and Darren saw it. And of course, the throw was to Rob. Rob made a great catch, but Darren and Brett immediately called a penalty for illegal touching of the ball. So Darren, you had a better perspective of that play than I did. But
yeah, I think this was more accidental. Brett usually likes to do it on the sidelines, like if he's a cornerback and the receiver's running out or somewhere close to the sidelines, he'll push him or guide him outside. And as soon as you step out of bounds, you are not allowed to be the first receiver to touch the ball. It's an absolute rule. It's legitimate. It's it's kind of lame in a certain respect, because it's kind of like, why does that preclude you from coming back in? But it is a rule. Brett has done it before, but I think he just was I don't think that was his intent, was to get Rob to go behind him. He's just guarding him, and that's the path Rob took, was on the other side of Brett, out of bounds. And the fact that ball was caught, I mean, it was thrown in like massive amazing coverage.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful ball, beautiful catch. And there is a part of me like wants to, give the credit to the receiver on that play, no matter what rule was violated. But we did just give you the call right before that, where Rob made another beautiful catch in the other end zone that you referred to. That was, I honestly thought that was way out of bounds. But when Brett said it was close, I was like, if it's close, you give it to him. I mean, like I didn't think it was close, but Brett said maybe he got his knee down in bounds. And so once you did that, I think you got to give him the catch. But so I thought it was, he was out of bounds here for sure, and it was an illegal touch, but it was a beautiful play. So it's,
Yeah, and the one thing that the conspiracy theorist of this panel would agree with, and Nigel has called me out on this a couple of times, especially when he gets heated and in the moment, that I'm making calls or making decisions based on trying to keep the game close. And really, I think the spirit of our game is to keep the game close. So if one team has given us, whatever it is that the call is, especially on scores, right, which are significant in our league, we don't have tons and tons of scoring, although 5-4 is a rather high scoring game. We still had the benefit of the defense allowing for a questionable call to stand. And then a couple of drives later, or a drive later, in a significant and impactful moment of the game, there's another questionable call. I think you have to try to find 50-50 on most of these questionable calls, because again, going up 2 scores that late in the game essentially ends the game. And who wants that? We want it to be exciting down the stretch. We want the league to play out in that way, I think. So
I have mixed feelings about it. You want to be right. You don't want to do it just to keep the game close. Like that's not the right way to go. But I understand your mentality, and I mostly agree with it, that if a call was given, right before to the other team that was somewhat questionable, and then another questionable call comes, it makes sense to perhaps give the other team the benefit of the doubt. Not so much to keep the game close. That may be a side benefit, but it's mainly just out of an interest in fairness. In terms of those close calls. I mean that's my own opinion, but again, I think the real conspiracy theorists on the panel would say I win every call, so I win every call, so
That's part of the problem, by the way, Darren, is that I don't want you to continue to be accused by a number of different players out there, without naming names, that you get the benefit of almost every single call, because winning means more to you than it does anybody else.
You'd have fucked up, you know that, don't you?
So in going back to the game, you and I discussed your record, which was 7-2 going into the game. Lewis's was 10-1. The two of you happen to find yourself on the same team quite often. And one of the things that you want to shake is this sort of whatever the negative sort of thoughts are that Darren has Lewis, and that somehow your record is connected to Lewis in some way. You're like, I want to play against Lewis and beat Lewis. And I think that's a fair request on your part. And I will try to find a way to make sure that you have ample opportunity to have your own record based on your play and your team's play without the Lewis effect and the Lewis factor. In this particular case, our two best records were on the same team again. And it was against Nigel and my team that included T and Oliver, you're distracting me. But you have been talked about on this broadcast. Well, your stack keeping. All right. So
we talked about how awesome you are and what a good luck charm you are for your daddy.
For me. So thank you.
And by the way, we got off talking about Rob's great game, which I think was you were about to award him the MVP.
Is this only Nigel, T, and Darren?
What?
Is this only Nigel, T, and Darren?
Yes. For now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The,
so
the small audience. He wants
he wants a bigger audience.
He was about to pull out some dance moves.
So I know that you, Darren, you and T need to hop, but I just want to quickly say that, this was an opportunity to see if we could take down Goliath. And sure enough, we were able to pull off a victory, which doesn't happen very often when you have Darren and Lewis on the same team. For whatever reason, Lewis said that he really wasn't himself going into the game. He admitted to me that he didn't have a 5-hour energy, that he only had a Celsius drink. He was having some hamstring issues. He had been on a plane apparently for like 27 straight hours, 4 different flights.
Have you talked about Oren?
And so maybe that was a part of the reason why. But then I looked at the stats and I see that didn't Lewis account for 2 or 3 of the touchdowns?
Yeah, honestly, the main difference wasn't in his performance, but in his on-field personality. Yeah. And I gotta say, it was an improvement. So
it was amazing.
Because he like I said, he was on the line a bunch of times. He complained about it. He said, I should be out. What's going on? And he also sat a couple times,
twice,
including near the end of the game.
I couldn't believe it.
and he, this would not have happened without much more verbal opposition on a regular. It definitely was a different Lou. I'd like to somehow believe it's a sign of maturity, but I think it's just a sign of him being really fatigued.
Well, it's probably a combination.
Lack of the 5-hour drink.
When I spoke to Lou after the game, I said, "Is everything all right, man? I couldn't believe that you were on the line on one of the last drives. Chris was leading the way, leading the charge on a very important drive, and you weren't even one of his receivers. What was that all about?" And he goes, "I guess I'm maturing, man. I'm getting old." So maybe his 35th birthday is really having an effect on him. I have no idea, but that was Lou's response. I still thought Lou played a good game. It was quiet from Lou. Maybe we got the new Lou. He was quiet. There was no arguments from him. He played the line. I didn't hear him complaining to his teammates, yelling at his teammates.
It was a much quieter Lou.
There was no passive aggressiveness that I was hearing from. Well, about time you caught the ball, Joe Jr. Or telling Darren what plays to run in the huddle. Like there was nothing.
Well, he still did that, but that's you're not getting rid of that. But yeah, no, for sure.
So
but
just to finalize this, because I know you guys want to go. I ended up coming out of the zone, throwing an ill-advised pass across my body, across the field, trying to connect with Rob. Miles picked me off, not only picked the ball off, but returned it for a pick 6. And at that point, I figured, now we've got ourselves a ball game. Maybe my run is done. I'm not on that heater. that I was on, and it was time to turn the ball over to Nigel. And Nigel took the ball, and he's like, "All right, you're giving me back this thing that I cherish. I'm ready to this precious thing called the football, and I'm ready to deliver." And sure enough, Nigel came through in the end, as he seemingly always does when given that opportunity. He was able to brush off that early afternoon, that early morning, whatever it was that was affecting him.
Doldrums. Was there a hawk? Did a hawk come out?
Then maybe a hawk did come out because he threw a beautiful ball to Rob and had another beautiful ball that, like we talked about, was overturned, but was another touchdown pass. And ultimately, I'll just say that what I think were the good guys won on this past Sunday, 5-4, and it felt really, really good to hang an L on Darren and Lewis, which doesn't happen all that often.
No, it doesn't.
Now,
I will
You
say
talk about
though,
the funny
that
things
last
I
drive, I
included
was
in that.
very, very nervous when they started marching down. I forgot who they had. They obviously had Lou, I think Darren, and someone else they were going out with. Oh, Joe Jr., I think. And we just had to like pull people from different places. And I think Chris, he got greedy on one play and went to Lewis, and then Rob undercut it and took it. And that was pretty much the ball game. But that last drive gave me, I was nervous. I can't even lie. I think T was too. Because you guys were marching.
It shows you how significant Guy can be, you know, in his I don't know if he's underrated or properly rated, but I know that Guy happens to be like one of Caston's favorite players out there every week. He like wants a football card of Guy. Because the guy is up against Lewis every week. He shows a good attitude pretty much all the time. He handles his business. He shows great enthusiasm. He's very supportive of his teammates. Like, he's just a lovely guy. But when we lost him to this gender reveal, it changed our defense. It changed the dynamic of the game. So it just goes to show you how important Guy is. Now,
and it's funny that you say that. He saw that pick six to Miles as he was leaving the field. So I knew on that drive home, he was like, "Oh man, we probably lost this one." But I was happy that we pulled it out and probably sent him the note.
So we're doing a win-loss reveal for a Guy.
It was a
Yes.
win.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a win. Yes.
That's right.
So
That's
I want to now end the FDL, inside the FDL, with an end to whatever potential debate there may be, and maybe there is no debate. But leaving the field, I asked a couple of these guys, like, who's the MVP? And of course, they told me what I wanted to hear. But I actually think it's inappropriate to give me the MVP. I had a great game. I feel very good about my game. I got a lot of compliments, which feels really good. I didn't hurt my team. I helped my team. We had a victory. That's great. But the real MVP last week has to be Rob. The guy came down with every ball. He had 2 picks that were critical. He had 2 touchdowns caught. He had a sack. And I think his defense, what was it, 3? 3 what?
Just one.
Oh.
No, I was saying, you said 2 touchdowns caught. I meant 3.
Oh, right. I got you. I think the guy would be a top 2, top 3 player in our league. I mean, honestly, we have a couple of guys, probably Lewis and Yosef, vying for MVP so far this year. I think Rob would definitely be up there in that category of MVP talk if he played with us consistently. And I think it's very appropriate to award Rob the MVP. I am definitely in support of that.
Game sealing, INT,
interception.
You
he made great
walk off the field with the
great
MVP
catches. You're gonna get many more.
Here.
What'd you say, T?
No debating from that.
No, and you'll get plenty of opportunities to get your MVP. That's the beauty of being quarterback.
Starting this Sunday. How about that?
That's a good segue.
So where are we at with RSVPs before we conclude this edition of Inside the FDL?
We have 13 right now, including a questionable Abraham. I'm okay with it. A small game, I'm fine. It doesn't bother me one bit to have a 6-on-6, and I think we'll probably end up with 1 or 2 more, but we'll see what the final numbers look like. But it's a good group of guys. Nice small game. Should be actually a beautiful, cloudy, but perfectly fine fall football day again. So we're getting lucky on that front. I'm looking forward to it, man. Get it back out there. Get back on the W column. I'm going against Lou this week. Let's let's see what happens. I mean, honestly, a part of it is me going against Lou, but then I know I'm going to have to also
Well, how
battle.
do you know you're going to go against Lou already? I mean, because I said
you
that
told me. You told me.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do it.
Acceptable request. So
It is. It is.
Hey, listen, I have no problems keeping Darren and Lou on the same team. Me, you, and I do it again.
Let's go, baby. I love it.
I have no problems either.
Yeah.
No problem with that.
I do want at some point.
It makes the wins that much more valuable.
Meaningful.
I do want at some point to play with Nigel. I mean, it is crazy that Nigel and I are friends and like get along well. I mean, on the field we get kind of at each other a little bit, but like the fact that we have had to play against each other for literally 5 years, maybe longer, basically every week we're on opposite teams, and that we allow, we compartmentalize. Yes, thank you, major, and realize that whatever happens on the field stays on the field, and
that's right.
That's sweet, but I do think it'll be fun.
Well, I will say,
and that will come with your continued improvement as an opposing.
That's right. That's right, Jay. It's on you.
Jay. Honestly speaking, you two are the top 2 QBs in the league, in my opinion. I'm going to be honest about that. And so putting both of you guys on the same team, it's like, who we have left? Gary. I mean, Jay's coming up. That's
what I said. It's on Jay. This is Jay.
I have to improve.
I'm not saying right now. I'm saying like this is my hope that as we cultivate this newer talent.
Hey, I say give Tony a shot. Tony got a little.
Maybe it's Tony.
I was just gonna say Tony is the one that has an opportunity now to maybe rise in the ranks and show us what he's got. I feel like he could have been used the last couple of weeks, maybe more on some trick plays.
Yes.
Without Oren, without Chris, Gary, I don't think so far he hasn't RSVP. I don't know what the story is, but so I'm assuming he's out again this week. So this could be a week for him to get half the game. Beautiful job, guys. This is great. Blessed as always to have you around. T, you want to take us home, baby?
Yes.
Well, folks, that concludes our first episode of Inside the FDL, and we hope you enjoyed it just as much as we had fun presenting it to you. Until next time, stay tuned, because you never know, you might be cold.
Oh!